What's up? So today we are going to make the very first ever BFS natural. I actually got a really nice fork here. I think is going to work great. Says it's Mulberry. So yeah, I think it's going to work just fine. And I'm going to take you through a few of the steps that I use when I'm making a natural. And then, yeah, we're going to make sure that it's going to work first. That's the most important thing. And then we'll cut it up and turn it into something beautiful, hopefully. Okay, so one of the first things that's super important when you're going to make a frame this way, you really have to make sure that your template will fit over the fork like that. This gets really close, and I think that's actually, if I move it up, quite a bit of room up there. But you can see that's pretty close. So I'm hoping that this works, but this fork isn't really going to be able to be made into anything else because the fork gap is basically non-existent in there. So PFS is the best bet with this one. But one of the other reasons that I really like this wood is because that inside grain, oh, man, it looks so beautiful right now. I'm really pumped about that. So we're going to start like that. First step is to flatten one side pretty well so that you can trace your template. And that's when you can make your cuts after that, in here and here and here. So that's what we're going to do first. Yes, look at that grain in there. That is amazing. This side not so much, but it'll come. It'll come. So now you got to find a flat spot. Trace our fork. So you guys can see right there. Trace it here. So it's not important that you get it exactly right the first time, because once you cut the top forks off and the bottom off, and then this little piece and this little piece out, you'll get a better idea of where you want to really draw it. So when you do cut it, just give it a little bit of extra room. You can always take more off. It's really hard to put more back on. So for this job, in order to cut the top and the bottom off, I just use my scroll saw. Okay, now to finish some of the edges, I use a belt sander. Okay, so this is what I'm left with right now. Don't worry about these lines. You can still see them. I got to take out the middle of that. I'm going to do that with the scroll saw. Awesome. Let's get more sanding done. So I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a slope so it's a little bit more ergonomic into the handle this way. So this would be the front, and I'm going to slope it inward that way. and then slope the tips just slightly forward and the base, the bottom of the handle just slightly forward. This is coming out awesome so far. It's definitely got that tiny little bit of slope to it. I'm gonna round the tips off, and then we gotta start on with the hand sanding. This is about to get sanded. I'm gonna jump right into the 320 because it's already pretty smooth, and I'm gonna use the sandpaper to fix the gap. I want to use sandpaper because I want to take the least amount of material out of the gap as possible. This is a pickle fork after all, so but I can use the sandpaper to even it out as well. Okay, so I got this thing sanded up to 320. Don't need to go any more than that. The more that you sand it up, the smoother it will be, and it'll make the bands harder to stick to the wood. Now, it wouldn't really matter in our case because I'm going to put an epoxy coating on this, and the epoxy is very, very tacky, so the latex really likes to stick to that stuff. But if you notice right here, there's a void, and that's a naturally occurring void. It was there in the wood. But that little void needs to get filled in, and we're going to use super glue and a combination of sawdust and aluminum dust. And the only reason it's a combination is because that was what was available to me. So try to show you guys this. It's a little bit awkward because of the way that I got to hold it, but basically what you do is you just pour a little bit of super glue into that crack. Now I'm going to let it sit there for a second because sometimes the wood likes to soak it up. This doesn't look like it's going much anywhere though. And then what you do is you take a little bit of the sawdust and you sprinkle it real easy over the hole and just pack it just a little bit. And then you tap it to get the leftover off. And now it looks like that. And then we're going to do that a couple of times just so that we make sure that the sawdust hardens and that we have all of the gap filled in. Again, and each time that you do it, you want to push it a little bit harder. Move it around with your finger a little bit, like that, to get all the loose stuff off there. And then we'll do one more time. Just tapping a little bit so that the super glue will harden all of the sawdust. Last time around. You should wear gloves when you do this. I don't have my gloves on. Natty safety gear on today, which is not good. But okay, so now you're left with a big ugly spot like that. And then we're just going to take another piece of sandpaper and try to sand over just that spot right there. All right, so you can see now it's very smooth. It's tucked in there. There's no ridge. You can't feel it at all. Obviously, you can't tell because you're just watching this on the internet. But yeah, looks great, feels great. It's time to get this thing finished up. Okay, so I'm sure that you guys have seen me do this in previous videos, but one crucial step that I leave out typically is using rubbing alcohol. This is 91% rubbing alcohol to spray down the frame. And the reason you want to do that is because you want something moist to take all of the sawdust off of the frame. so that you're not epoxying the sawdust onto the frame. It'll actually make it look a lot cleaner. And alcohol is the perfect option for that because it's obviously wet, but when you rub it on there, alcohol also dries really quickly. So you'll be able to spray it down, wipe it down, and then it'll be basically ready to put epoxy on in about a minute. And typically I like to spray the towel. This is also when you'll be able to get your first look at what it'll look like when it's epoxied. So you can see we're going to get really nice kind of dark yellowish color in the middle there with some of the white poking through. And then typically you want to keep wiping it down until the rag comes off clean. Next step, gloves. And then you want to mix your epoxy together. I use the 1-to-1 total boat 1-to-1 total boat mix, where you mix equal parts of the resin and hardener. I buy them in the gallon size because my wife and I like to use them for other projects as well. There's a link in the description, by the way, if you guys want to check that out. And I like to do this part with my hands. Start with a very thin layer and rub the epoxy in a lot, because it'll start to, the wood especially will start to soak the epoxy up into the fibers of the wood. The epoxy is going to do 2 jobs. Actually, it's going to do a bunch of jobs. I shouldn't say 2. One of the main things that the epoxy does is it actually helps to stabilize the wood. It'll just harden a lot of the outer layer of the wood and really make it a stronger overall frame. It'll waterproof it. Man, that's always so exciting. Wish you guys could see what I'm seeing. The lighting in here is terrible. So then we the string, the thumbtack. Stick it in the bottom. Now it's going to take a couple of coats. I'm not going to show you all that, but we'll show you what it's done. We'll shoot it, we'll sign it, and we'll send it off. All right, so we finished it up. I put some temporary bands on there because I don't shoot a longer draw. When I'm shooting Pickle Fork, I like to pull straight to my face there. So these are temporary bands, but right now we want to check it out. Got this is my official insignia now. Got 1-inch fork tips on there, so it'll take a pretty decently wide band. This is the first ever natural BFS. Let's shoot it. Can you see the catch box? It's got a little can in there. I don't know if you can see the can, but now I'm not very good with Pickle Fork, so we're gonna do our best, but still try to hit the can. You ready? There it is. Boom. I'm not terrible with Pickle Fork. I'm just not super duper. Ah. Couple more shots for you here. There we go. All right, now let's see if we can hit 3 in a row. You ready? Mm-hmm. 2. Well, stayed in the can. Last one. Boom, 3 in a row. All right, man. Jay, this is coming to you. Last look before I ship. I'll put the bands on there that you asked for. Might shoot around with it a little bit more. We'll see. But absolutely, this thing came out great. Said it's Mulberry. The BFS.